More tension, more fear, more unrest as the Taliban's propaganda machine gathers pace. With some Afghan citizens still desperately trying to leave, the chaos around the airport continues. And despite assurances from Taliban leaders, many are worried about what happens next.
How frightened are you?
Frightened?
Scared?
Yeah, I'm scared also. Of course, I'm a human. Everyone is scared.
Dennis Law, who just had a knock on the head, used his head to score Manchester's first.
Another footballing legend reveals he's now living with dementia. Calls for more accountability as we reveal yet more shocking examples of what housing tenants are dealing with. And lifting Jack's spirits thousands of times over. The strangers' cards that made this birthday boy feel the love from all over the world.
It's going to take a long time to get through them all, isn't it?
You'll need another birth.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. With the global consequences of the collapse of Afghanistan and its takeover by the Taliban are still being worked out, on the ground it's still a place of fear and uncertainty tonight. There are more scenes of chaos around Kabul airport, with thousands of people desperate for help as efforts continue to airlift out Western nationals and their staff. And today is Independence Day in Afghanistan, an anniversary which the Taliban marked by declaring they had beaten the United States. Our senior international correspondent, John Irvine, reports from Kabul.
In Kabul right now, freedom is in the air, while on the ground it's far from guaranteed. The consequence is thousands of Afghans still trying to reach the airport here. The Taliban have promised safe passage to those who worked for Western countries and have been granted asylum. The problem is the thousands of other locals who don't qualify. They were met with volleys of shots in the air meant to disperse them. But still they descended on the airport in the vain hope of catching an evacuation flight. Outside abandoned and shuttered embassies, including this, the United Kingdom's, people are still waiting in the vain hope of getting transit papers. This family have been here since yesterday and say they want to get to Britain because they fear for the children's lives. This is another way the Taliban are trying to halt the attempted exodus. As is always the case with conquests, a top priority when they stormed Kabul was taking over state TV. In a country turned upside down in a day, a 31-year-old Taliban administrator is now responsible for informing and trying to reassure the nation.
So people have no reason to be frightened?
No.
The people should not be afraid of us. All those who spent the last 20 years fighting us, killing and injuring us, bombarding us, we have forgiven them for the sake of nation.
The state broadcaster is one of 6 stations still on air here. Before the Taliban takeover, there were 30. When the Taliban last ruled Afghanistan between 1996 and 2001, they frowned upon television and imagery in general. Wind forward to today and they're embracing 21st century technology. The key question, of course, is has the message changed? Another network called Women's Television pulled the plug on Sunday, ending transmissions because they felt threatened by the Taliban. Of the 50 women who worked in front of and behind the cameras, Zara Nabi is the only one still trying to do her job using social media.
How frightened are you?
Frightened?
Scared?
Yeah, I'm scared also. Of course, I'm a human. Everyone is scared, too much. It's important. If I run away, it means all of us run away. So they say we success.
The The studio is in a high-rise building from which we could see the evacuation process continue. I asked Zara about the future of her country under Taliban rule.
And right now they are a little bit calm. They are saying, still they are calm, everyone is scared. So imagine if they took complete control, they won't allow us even to talk at home between each other.
If she's right, then a new dark age really has descended here. John Irvine, ITV News, Kabul.
Here, the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab today flatly rejected calls for him to resign over the crisis. He's been criticised for staying on holiday in Crete as the Taliban takeover unfolded. Well, let's go to our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan, now. Carl, I suspect he's feeling a bit of pressure.
Yes, and that increased today with a report in the Daily Mail that last week Mr Raab was asked to personally make a phone call on behalf of Afghan interpreters from his holiday hotel, but that he said no, get a junior minister to do it. Instead, Labour are now calling for him to resign, although walking into Downing Street this morning, Mr Raab seemed completely unconcerned.
You're going to resign, Mr Raab?
No. In case you missed it, that was a no. The Defence Secretary told me that Mr Raab was in fact right not to have made the call, that there were other priorities at the time that were more important than phoning the soon-to-be deposed Afghan Foreign Minister.
I would have not made the call because what was important on Friday was not a call to a rapidly disintegrating Afghan government with no power at all. What was important on Friday was keeping that airport open.
The danger for Dominic Raab is that this becomes a channel for all the fury that MPs here have been expressing about the way the Afghans have been treated. But I suspect what may save him in the end is that at this stage anyway, it's very hard to prove any actual harm has been done. And also, Boris Johnson has been notably averse to sacking cabinet ministers.
Carl, thank you. In a heartbreaking development tonight, it's emerged that a 5-year-old boy who fell to his death from a hotel window in Sheffield had only just escaped from Afghanistan. The boy's family is among a number of refugees staying at the hotel. Let's talk to our North of England reporter, Hannah Miller. Hannah, do we know what happened?
Well, this has been described as an incredibly sad situation. A family who'd come here in the hope of safety and a new life, which is already scarred by tragedy. The boy and his family are thought to have arrived in this country in the past few weeks. It's thought that his dad had worked for the British Embassy in Kabul and they were staying here along with a number of other families while they waited for a more permanent home. But around 2:30 yesterday afternoon, the boy is said to have fallen from his hotel window onto the car park behind. One witness described hearing the mum shouting, screaming after her son. The air ambulance and the police attended, but the boy couldn't be saved. The details of exactly what happened here remain unclear, but it's prompted the Refugee Council to call for a review of the safety of the accommodation that's being offered to all those refugees fleeing the Taliban. The Home Office tonight say they can't comment on that specifically while the police investigation continues.
OK, Hannah, thank you. One of the great footballers of the 20th century has become the latest player to be diagnosed with dementia. In his heyday, Denis Law was nicknamed the King for his prolific goal-scoring and charismatic presence in Sir Matt Busby's legendary Manchester United side. Now, 81 years old, the former Scotland international says he wants to be open about his condition, as Peter Smith reports.
From the kick, Denis Law, who just had a knock on the head, used his head to score Manchester's first.
The man known simply as the King. With a nickname like that, you get a sense of just how good Denis Law was in his prime. But today, the 81-year-old became the latest in a line of former players to confirm he too has been diagnosed with mixed dementia. In a statement, Denis Law said, "I know the road ahead will be hard, demanding, painful and ever-changing, and so ask for understanding and patience. I recognise how my brain is deteriorating and how my memory evades me when I don't want it to, and how this causes me distress in situations that are beyond my control."
Well, the centre is headed home by Denis Law.
There's clearly some kind of relationship between dementia and professional football. And I think it's important to stress that at the moment that relationship seems to be linked to professional footballers who have probably spent hours and hours and hours in football training, heading continually.
Denis Law gave Manchester United the best of his career, starring alongside Sir Bobby Charlton and George Best, the United Trinity. From their 1968 European Cup winning squad, Denis Law is now the 6th member to be diagnosed with dementia. He follows Nobby Stiles and Bobby Charlton, as well as Bill Foulkes, Tony Dunn and David Herd. Former West Bromwich Albion player Jeff Astle died with dementia. His daughter has been campaigning for the people who run the game to give more protection.
Players are dying and they need to do something about that. So what happened to my dad, the diagnosis of Denis, we don't want these players just to be a statistic, and we certainly don't want this happening to players in the future.
In his announcement today, Denis Law showed he still has his humour when he said he's going to tackle this head-on, excuse the pun. And as many a defender will tell you, when Denis Law goes at anything head-on, the game is far from over. Peter Smith, ITV News, Glasgow.
A coroner heard today how the Plymouth mass killer Jake Davison had an argument with his mother shortly before shooting her dead. Davison killed his mother Maxine at her home in Plymouth last Thursday. He then went outside and shot dead 4 more people in a 12-minute attack before turning the gun on himself. A huge scientific study of 2 of the main COVID vaccines, AstraZeneca and Pfizer, today reaffirmed their effectiveness, but the research also revealed that herd immunity is unlikely, even if people are double jabbed. That's because someone who's had 2 doses can still pass on the highly infectious Delta variant. Our science editor Tom Clark has the details and the consequences.
My life has been drastically changed. I can't go to the theatre. I can't be free to hug my grandchildren.
Tina has a form of leukemia that makes her one of 500,000 people who are highly vulnerable to COVID because of a weakened immune system. For the same reason, her vaccination is unlikely to give her much protection.
I was so happy to have the vaccine and felt that I would have some protection. It was such a blow to hear that we probably haven't made any antibodies.
That's why, to protect people like Tina, vaccines for the rest of us are so important, like the over 16s now being invited for jabs. But today we learned that against the Delta variant, vaccines aren't quite as good at preventing us getting infected in the first place. 2 weeks after a second dose of the Pfizer vaccine, 85% of people were protected from infection, compared to 68% with AstraZeneca. After 3 months, effectiveness of Pfizer falls to 75%, compared to 61% for AstraZeneca.
We still get good protection against Delta.
What's more, the study found vaccinated people who do get infected are likely to be able to infect others.
The fact that you can get it with high levels of virus in the nose and throat suggests that, as many people have started to say, herd immunity may actually not be possible for this virus, and that unvaccinated people may continue to still be at risk of hospitalisation and death.
The finding means the government's vaccine booster programme may be crucial.
So we are going to have a booster scheme. It will start sometime in September. I couldn't tell you exactly when, because before we started, I think as people would expect, we need to get the final advice from our group of experts, our independent scientific and medical advisors.
Everyone else getting vaccinated has done a lot to protect Tina from the pandemic. But until COVID rates drop substantially, she won't feel safe in the outside world. Tom Clark, ITV News.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News.
In a matter of minutes, from dripping on the edges, the whole thing came down.
Some of the most shocking scenes yet in our investigation into Britain's housing crisis. And why Harry's rift with the royal family has flared up again. Those stories and more after the break.
News at 6:30.
Welcome back. Our continuing investigation into the shocking conditions that many social housing tenants have to live in tonight focuses on the lack of any official help for their welfare. We've met desperate residents having to cope without support amid emergencies like collapsed ceilings. And as Daniel Hewitt reports, there are urgent calls for a new national body to represent tenants.
So this is the bedroom where we sleep.
Adiola has worked hard to put a roof over her and her daughter's head, only for it to come crashing down around them.
In a matter of minutes, from dripping on the edges, the whole thing came down.
She was standing directly underneath what was initially a small leak, trying to catch the water, inches from where her 4-year-old usually sleeps.
This is what fell on you. I mean, that's heavy. I mean, that is... I can barely lift that up.
That fell.
That is
That
heavy.
landed on me. So luckily, it didn't fall above her cot. That would have killed her.
Instead, Adiola escaped with an injured arm.
I just drowned it down.
In the moments afterwards, as she sat in shock, covered in plaster and paint, trying to work out how this had happened, it got worse.
This got full. Next thing I knew, I heard it drop. All in the bath, in the sink. It's all in the sink, all over the floor. Again, you can see the concrete's just piled in that corner. I feel like I've been treated like an animal.
But next door, Basil was not so shocked.
It's been happening for 7 years that I've been in here.
He says he's consistently reported leaks to the landlord, Lambeth Council.
Once it rains outside, it will rain in here.
And 3 weeks ago, his ceilings caved in too, in his kitchen and his living room.
It just falls on deaf ears and then it gets to the point where you just give up. Even like now, it's like I've given up. I just can't be bothered no more. I just really can't.
Lambeth Council said it regrets the disruption caused by tenants at Holly's house and blamed this on recent heavy rain. The government has set up a new expert panel to improve social housing policy. ITV News contacted the 14 organisations on that panel. 11 told us what is really needed is a new national tenants body dedicated to representing tenants' interests, a proposal the government has so far dismissed.
Until we've got somewhere that tenants across this country know where they can go to, know where they can input to, and that the fact that when they raise issues at a national level, when we're seeing themes that are happening across the country, when they can raise those collectively, then I think we'll start to see some real change.
People can't live in slums.
But without that voice, they're forced to amplify their own. The residents of Charles Dickens House and Tower Hamlets have been holding regular protests over conditions in their homes inside this 60s tower block. They showed us videos like this and the destruction that has followed.
This is not something new. I wrote to them, I wrote to every single local politician, MP. They like to put the service charge up year by year, but we are not getting the service.
Tower Hamlets Community Housing have pledged to improve conditions in this block, but tenants so often have little faith in the fixes that follow in a housing system they see as broken. Daniel Hewitt, ITV News.
On to today's other news, and police have released a man on suspicion of murdering a man at the home of the entertainer Michael Barrymore. Stuart Lubbock's body was discovered in the TV presenter's swimming pool in 2001. Essex police say there was not enough evidence for a realistic chance of a successful prosecution. Yorkshire County Cricket Club have apologised to a former player after investigations said he'd suffered inappropriate behaviour. Azim Rafiq claimed he suffered racist abuse while at the club, which had left him close to suicide. Geronimo, the alpaca, which has twice tested positive for bovine TB, has been given another 24-hour reprieve, that's according to its owner. The High Court gave Helen MacDonald until 4:30 this afternoon to destroy the animal. She says Environment Agency officials won't do so till tomorrow afternoon. A new chapter in the unauthorised biography of the Sussexes is tonight threatening to open up a new rift with the Queen. In an epilogue to Finding Freedom, it's claimed the couple were unhappy at the monarch's response to parts of their Oprah Winfrey interview. Our royal editor Chris Shipp joins us now. So, Chris, exactly what's being said and who's saying it?
Right, good question. We're talking about this not because of something the palace has said, not even something that Harry and Meghan have said. It's because this biography on Harry and Meghan, Finding Freedom, has had to be updated. It came out last year, but so much has happened in the last 12 months they needed to do an update. And of course, they touch on those very serious claims that Meghan made in the Oprah Winfrey interview about racism in the royal family. Now, you might remember the Queen's response was quite short, and it included the phrase, recollections may vary. This is back in March. Well, in the book, the authors say that those three words, recollections may vary, did not go unnoticed by the couple. And a source close to them said that they were not surprised that full ownership wasn't taken by the palace of this very significant issue. And I think for me that the more interesting part of this is because Harry and Meghan have always gone out of their way not to criticise the Queen and Prince Philip at the time as well. But if they are criticising her in the way in which this book describes, then I think that will be felt very personally by the Queen, who remains at Balmoral in Scotland after everything that she's been through this year.
Of course. Chris, thanks very much. Finally, Jack Annell had been feeling rather lonely as his 101st birthday approached, as his daughter Mary lives in Australia and couldn't visit him. So staff at his care home in Halifax decided to cheer the veteran up with an elaborate plan. As Rebecca Barry reports, they organised thousands of cards, a message from Jack's old RAF base and a brass band.
Happy birthday, Jack, with a lovely cake.
Sometimes the kindness of strangers can be overwhelming.
We had some from America, New Zealand.
For 101-year-old Jack, the pandemic's been particularly cruel. He survived COVID twice, and his daughter in Australia can't come over to say happy birthday. So others, thousands and thousands of them, have stepped in.
Flabbergasted, actually. It's just unbelievable. A very big thank you to everybody, please.
It's going to take a long time to get through them all, isn't it?
You'll need another birth.
Care home staff were worried Jack was feeling down, so appealed online for people to send cards. They never, ever expected this.
It was just boxes upon boxes and telephone calls, just unbelievable. And it's just lovely to know there's such beautiful people out there.
Born in 1920, Jack served in the RAF during the Second World War. His wife, May, died 5 years ago.
Last year when he was 100, his daughter was supposed to be coming over from Australia. We were going to try and make him a party, and we couldn't even come and see him. So this year's been fabulous, really.
Jack doesn't like a fuss, but no one wanted him to feel lonely today.
I'm just amazed, actually. What do you think when you see it all? It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. Happy birthday, Jack. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Oh, bless him. Happy birthday, Jack. Right, that's it from us for now. Raggy will be here with news at 10, but from everybody here on the Evening News team, enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.